Tonight, is there a crisis with our rubbish?
This is on a 2 weekly bin collection, and look at the state of it in here. So if that goes to every 3 weeks, there's going to be 3 weeks worth of, for example, nappies. The smell is going to be not something that I want to be living around, really.
Why our bins are getting smaller.
We're disgusted now that our bin size is going to practically half, and we're just going to end up with quite a bad pest problem, and it's going to be quite unhygienic.
Is your local tip under threat?
Since the waste facilities have been shut, we've had an increase in fly tipping.
Good evening and welcome to the Tonight programme. Every year the UK produces millions of tonnes of waste, but for the first time in a decade, recycling rates are actually falling. And with some bins getting smaller and other councils collecting rubbish less often, there's growing concern about the impact it could have on our streets and our environment. Jonathan Maitland reports on the Battle of the Bins.
With Britain's population the highest on record, we're now creating more waste than ever. An incredible 22 million tonnes of household waste a year. A lot of it ends up here in huge recycling depots. But more and more it's also ending up here, littering the roads, streets and back alleys of Britain. Fly tipping is on the increase, and some are saying that's because of the way we're dealing with our rubbish.
Where I live, London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham, I'm quite lucky because my rubbish gets picked up once every week. But compared to the rest of the country, I'm actually in the minority.
Back in the 90s, fortnightly collections were first introduced. And now nearly 2/3 of all households in the UK have their bins collected every 2 weeks. But what's starting to creep in is collections once every 3 weeks. Salford, for example, is going to trial collections once every 3 weeks next month. And residents have big concerns. Blaine, who's started a petition, thinks 3 weekly collections of black bins will mean more fly tipping.
Do you think all this rubbish here will get worse if 3 weekly collections start?
Unfortunately, I can pretty much guarantee it will get worse because this is on a 2 weekly bin collection, and look at the state of it in here. And you have got stuff like rodents and foxes that are going to rummage through all this stuff, especially when the bins are full like that. And that's part of the issue. And if it goes to 3 weekly, it's going to be even worse than what it is now. Me and my family, we do as much recycling as we can in terms of using the right bins, but I still know that my black bin is getting full every 2 weeks. So if that goes to every 3 weeks, there's going to be 3 weeks worth of, for example, nappies. In the summer, the smell is going to be not something that I want to be living around, really, because nobody wants to live in a mess.
Despite 7,000 names on Blaine's petition, the council say they're just trying to encourage people to recycle, and they are tough on fly tippers. Around the corner in Bury, the local council introduced 3 weekly collections 18 months ago, the first council in Britain to do so. Many are coping fine, but it's a different story for some families, like the Lawtons.
It always seems like at the end of the week, we always were overflowing with bins. And then when the local council announced that they were going to take our bin collection down to once every 3 weeks, it presented a major problem in our home. We were still finding ourselves packaging rubbish up and taking it to the local tip.
Step forward local entrepreneur Josh of Bury Bins. After hearing the 3 weekly collections were starting in Bury, he saw an opportunity and jumped at it. Private collections of the black bins for the town's household waste.
There's two options. We can go every week, except for the week that the council do, or we can go 2 weeks after the council And we mirror your bin collection day so it stays simple, so it's not confusing. So if your bin's usually collected on a Tuesday by the council, we'll be there on the Tuesday that the council aren't to empty your grey bin.
Your council tax covers your bin collection, but if you want a private one, it does cost. Josh charges £25 a month. But what about those concerns that people had in Salford about overflowing bins and fly tipping? Not a problem, according to the council.
The facts are that fly tipping tonnages have not increased since we introduced the new service. And fly tipping often consists of commercial waste, bulky items like furniture, which wouldn't go in the grey bin anyway, so there's no direct correlation between fly tipping and collection of the residual waste bin necessarily.
But on closer examination, figures suggest the council could be wrong. Fly tipping incidents were up 53% in Bury last year, compared to the average across England of just 6%. And black bag fly tipping by homeowners in Bury was up by 74%. Although Bury Council admit that fly tipping has increased, they say there was only a 1% rise in the year following the change to 3 weekly collections, and that recycling has increased. The question now, of course, is could a scheme like this, emptying the bins every 3 weeks, be coming to your neighbourhood anytime soon? Tonight decided to contact each council in England and Wales. We wanted to find out exactly how many councils have switched to 3 weekly bin collections. Of those who responded, 2 councils in England and 3 councils in Wales had already switched, with Cheltenham, Lancaster, Melton, Pendle, Salford in England, and Conwy, Anglesey, Glamorgan and Flintshire in Wales considering the switch.
Local authorities are having huge budget cuts and are likely to be hit by even more. So what they're trying to do is find ways where they can still collect the waste, still carry out their statutory duties and provide a good service, but at not such a great cost.
Another consequence of these budget cuts is that your local trip to the tip could also be a thing of the past.
This is a man's world. This is a man's world. This is a man's world. But it wouldn't be nothing, not a woman or a girl.
I find this quite therapeutic, actually, visiting the local tip, or household waste recycling centre as it's known. This is where you come to get rid of the stuff that you can't get rid of in your bins. And it's great for the environment, of course, but it also gives you that lovely, satisfying decluttering feeling. The only problem is, more and more places like this are coming under threat. Ugh.
In the wilderness.
This is the sleepy village of Stapleford in the heart of rural Lincolnshire. A few months ago, if a homeowner wanted to get rid of their rubbish, they'd head here, to their local tip in neighbouring Wisby. It was a gentle 10-minute drive, but no more. Because Wisby has been shut, and decluttering, say residents, has become a nightmare. It's a 40-minute drive through traffic to a tip in Lincoln city centre. And the locals are incensed. Councillor Roseanne Kirk is not happy and she's on a mission. She wants to drum up enough signatures to reopen it again.
Thank you very much for your support. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Wisby is in fact one of 2 local household recycling centres that Lincolnshire County Council have shut because of costs.
How do local residents feel about it? How do you feel about it?
Well, local residents are very enraged by what's happened. They feel that it was a very valuable service that we used. Personally myself, I'm very annoyed. We used it ourselves as a family. It was very good for helping the environment, and it's a real inconvenience for a lot of people. It's closed and they have to go into Lincoln.
And of course, presumably, a problem with fly tipping.
Yeah, since the waste facilities have been shut, we've had an increase in fly tipping, and we've got a good example here how awful it is for the environment and for the countryside.
Do you think this fly tipping is a direct result of those places closing down?
Yeah, we've had this fly tipping, increase in fly tipping all over the countryside in the last few weeks.
The council say that 95% of its residents are within 12 miles of a tip, and they haven't seen a substantial increase in fly tipping. But Lincolnshire's not the only place seeing cuts to local tips. Hampshire, Oxford, Staffordshire and Angus in Scotland are proposing to close local tips. And all these councils have cut opening hours or are planning to. In England, that's 12 out of 27 county councils cutting services. Lee Marshall represents the council staff who handle our waste.
That's one example of how the budget cuts are manifesting themselves in service provision. So the councils don't want to do it, but they're in the position of making hard decisions. So we sit with our little waste hats on, but actually councils are making decisions across all services. So do you cut household waste recycling centre, or do you reduce leisure centre opening hours? And they're the sorts of tough decisions they're having to make.
So are these cuts causing more fly tipping? Well, figures are up by 6% in the last year. Councils maintain this is because of commercial fly tippers and better enforcement, not cuts to services. But what councils are having to deal with is the public's falling out of love with recycling. For 10 years, from 2000 to 2010, we quadrupled the amount of rubbish we recycle. But now, for the first time, recycling rates have dropped. And that's another reason why councils collect our bins less. It forces us to recycle more.
So you might think that if your waste is collected half as often, that you're producing twice as much waste when it is collected. But that's been shown not to be the case. They've shown that if you have your waste collected half as often, you produce roughly 1.5 times the waste.
An alternative to reducing the frequency that our bins are emptied is to shrink them. Do you have a bin like this? This is standard wheelie bin size, 240 litre. But across the country, our bins are shrinking to 180 litre, 140 litre, and for some unlucky residents around the country, 120 litre. Claire from Hucknall in Nottinghamshire is not happy. Her local council are planning to shrink her bin from 240 to 180 litres, despite her having a busy family which includes her husband and her son William.
We're disgusted now that our bin size is going to practically half with the new bins coming into place, and we're going to lose our black bin. We've got both our green bin and black bin all full. Black bin today got emptied 3 days ago, is half full already, and this is our green bin, doesn't get emptied until Tuesday next week, which is 4 days away, and I've got 4 bags of rubbish waiting for it as soon as it gets emptied. Come on then, William, we need to squash the bin down, we've got lots more rubbish to get in.
So Claire's enlisted son William to deal with the problem. Don't try this at home.
Come on, we need to get the bag in. My husband's actually been made disabled this year, so we actually do struggle to get to the tip, hence why we've got quite a bit on the back garden. And if we lose our black bin, we have rats and mice that come from the brook that's just 500 metres down the road, and we're just going to end up with quite a bad pest problem, and it's going to be quite unhygienic. Wash it.
Clare's council says they're shrinking her bin to increase recycling and reduce costs, and they can offer advice to families like hers. But how many other councils have or are planning to introduce a slimmer bin? In an exclusive survey for tonight, we asked England and Wales councils if they've slimmed their bins. Of those who responded, 80 had already done so, and another 22 are planning to. That's over a third of all councils. But slimming our bins will only go so far, say the experts, because there's another thing that's stopping us from recycling more, and that's confusion over what we can and can't recycle. Where I live, in Hammersmith and Fulham, I separate my rubbish into two piles. My recyclables, plastics, cardboard, paper, glass and metals, which go into a clear sack, and my non-recyclables, which go into a black bin liner.
But many of my fellow Londoners have different waste systems. So let me and my rubbish take you on a journey on London's Central Line, where I will explain more. Here at Bond Street in the Borough of Westminster, you need a blue sack to put your recyclables in.
Next stop, Holborn, in the Borough of Camden.
A green box for recyclables and the added bonus of a food waste bin, depending on where you live. And you can also recycle your garden waste here.
Last stop along the Central Line today, Mile End in Tower Hamlets.
Hi mate, just look after that a second, thanks.
Here there's a pink reusable sack for your recyclables, and again, depending on where you live, you can recycle your food and garden waste.
So 4 stations, 4 boroughs and 4 completely different recycling schemes. And if I tried to get rid of my rubbish along the entire length of the Central Line from one end to the other, I'd have had to use 11 different schemes. So no wonder we're confused.
To be fair, London is a big place with many different types of housing and waste. But even experts say there are still too many schemes.
What you have to remember is recycling schemes were all developed on an ad hoc basis, and there have been some ridiculous reasons behind it. For example, where I live, I have a black bin, I have a red box and a blue box. I know of authorities where they haven't put out those colour boxes because of the political connotations with the colours. And you laugh because it's ridiculous. Do you think that's more or less ridiculous of not putting those colours out because of their links with football teams? You know, maybe if you're an Everton fan, you won't put stuff in a red box because it's red, and you're not red, you're blue.
But the confusion doesn't stop there. Many people, including me, are clueless when it comes to the finer details of the recycling advice given out by councils. And if I'm struggling, what about the next generation? These students volunteered to have their knowledge tested. They live in Lewisham in London, which has one of the lowest recycling rates in the country. And the question is, can they work out what can and can't be recycled? We've got a big pile of rubbish there that you've assembled. We've got 4 boxes with names on them, like paper, cardboard, glass, etc. But you can only put in the boxes what you think can be recycled in your borough, i.e. Lewisham. It's as simple as that. And then afterwards... I know, it's very simple. On hand was tonight's recycling expert, Karen Cannard. All right, let's get started.
Well, yeah, this is glass. What I want to do here is take the lids off.
Karen, the vexed question of metallic bottle tops. Our students did pretty well, but they had a problem with what to do with these. And let's be honest, there's not much uniformity between councils, is there?
No, there isn't. And, you know, some councils, you could take them off, others you keep them on. In our council, that's all changed recently. We put them in the bottle bank with the caps on. Now, before that, we used to take them off, put them in, and get rid of the bottle cap separately. So you're right, no uniformity. The key message is councils need to be more clear about whether it's caps on or caps off, and make that clear to the residents.
Lewisham has told us that they've now updated their guidelines.
It's a tube. That's a tube.
Well, most of that is definitely plastic.
Hello. What's that, a nail brush?
With an extra bit of polystyrene.
Wow.
So no polystyrene in your recycling bin.
Now, different types of plastic. The students had a slight problem with that.
Yeah.
What are the rules?
Not many councils will actually collect these. So most people will be putting that in the landfill bin.
Okay.
Some councils are now starting to recycle these hard plastics, which, you know, old toys, you know, your garden chairs, that kind of thing, at recycling centres. So it's always worth checking. But again, very few councils you'd expect to actually put these in your curbside bin.
Come on!
Right, so this is the metal box. Hello. Hello. I think this is a mistake.
But somebody obviously thought it was metal.
Weird hybrid things like this. Cardboard and metal. Very confusing.
Yeah, and it does make it a problem for recycling. And, you know, my question to the producers and the designers is, why isn't that cardboard on the bottom? Because that would make it so much easier for us at home and also for recyclers too.
Gone are the days when all your rubbish went into one bin that was emptied weekly. Now, with councils having to cope with recycling targets and budget cuts, welcome to a new world of shrinking bins, the closure of local tips, and less frequent black bin collections.
If you'd like more information about whether your council is planning to collect your rubbish less often or even close your local tip, please visit our website at itv.com/tonight. Until next time, good evening and thanks for watching. Coming up next week, we investigate food fraud and ask, how can we be sure the food we're eating is both authentic and safe?
So if they think it's 100% meat and it's got heart or liver in it, they should know about it, so it should be on the label.